What's going on, guys? I am here today to surprise you guys with a manga review that I didn't tell you guys I was reading, but I have caught up, and I read this in about 3 days because I was so engaged. And if you follow my channel, you know that me finishing a manga in 3 days is like really, really fast. I was first made aware of this manga when I was on the Saturday Morning Anime podcast, and they told me about this series that had a bunch of, gods from every single religion that's out there. They all exist, they're all real, and they're facing humanity in one giant tournament to decide the fate of humanity. And I was like, that sounds pretty interesting, pretty cool, and I'm a sucker for tournament arcs, obviously, so why don't I check this out? And I gotta say that this is one of the wildest, craziest, most insane, fun manga that I have ever read, and mostly it's just because of the sheer unexpectedness of everything that is happening. Also, the artwork and the pacing, the paneling of the fights themselves are absolutely incredible. But let me just get into the gist of a little bit of what I thought about this and a little bit of my thoughts and feelings moving forward of what this manga could eventually turn out to be. So the premise is extremely simple, and this manga throws you into the action right away. Immediately, chapter 2 or 3, the fights begin. So this manga is not wasting any time whatsoever. It's definitely going to throw you into the chaos absolutely immediately. So the premise is as basic as you could get. However, things do get more complex along the way. But this isn't like a complex, deep psychological manga in the terms of Berserk or something like that. Although I do feel like you can find value in a more psychological level from particular characters that they introduce, but I'll talk about that in a moment. The opening premise is that all of these gods do exist. So Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Zeus is there, Odin is there, you got Loki, Thor, Shiva in the Indian religions, they're all here. Everything is represented here, although I have yet to see Jesus pop up, and I really just want to see Jesus throw down. Can we get Jesus in this manga? I don't know if that would be too controversial, but you got every other god in there. Well, I guess the Prophet Muhammad isn't there either, but, you could get in a lot of trouble for drawing him, so I understand keeping him out. But the gods have decided to destroy mankind because mankind is awful. However, a Valkyrie comes up with the idea of giving mankind a chance to prove their worth, to prove themselves by defeating gods in a tournament. It was basically this loophole, clause that they put in. There's a lot of, funny elements in this manga, too, and this was kind of one of those things where it's oh, yeah, if the humans want to defeat us gods in a tournament, they can keep their survival. It was meant to be thrown in as a joke. However, there's this loophole where the Valkyries can kind of assimilate with a human weapon, giving the human an advantage, giving them a weapon that can harm a god. So that makes it a little bit more balanced, but pretty much it is still humans at their own level. So in order to do this, the other really cool thing about this manga is that it's taking humans from history, known history, and kind of bringing them back, resurrecting them to fight in tournaments. And we have people from all over, so many random, different, historical humans. We have Kojiro, that I know mostly from the Vagabond manga, which is really funny to see. Also, Musashi shows up looking very, very different than he did in the Vagabond manga. Obviously, it's not supposed to be that version from Vagabond, but these are real characters from history, so they're bringing them in. And Record of Ragnarok definitely takes its liberties to really kind of mess with the designs of how you might picture some of these characters and really gives it its own unique signature style. So that was really cool to see in there too. But you have characters like that, and then you have characters like Adam, the very first human who exists here, who was brought back to fight in this tournament as well. And then you also have a character like Jack the Ripper that they chose, which seemed like an oddball choice, and they all figured it was an oddball choice. Even in the story, it's why is he here representing humanity? So there's a lot of different aspects here, and I'm wondering why didn't anybody do something like this before? Or if they had, I'd never heard about it before. This is such a unique idea of taking characters from history and then putting them into a tournament. You could just have characters from history in general fight in a tournament themselves, but now we're fighting against different gods, and gods from all different sorts of religions from all around the world. So it really is this kind of all-encompassing thing that really showcases the full spectrum of humanity, both on the religious side and in the natural, real world, physical world, human history side. So we have all of these different players, and the author could have picked anybody. They could, there's an endless amount of historical heroes that they could have picked from, and an endless amount of gods that they could have picked from. And so it was very strategic that the ones that they did pick, because of how they play into the story and how they play into the fights. And that's just the thing, because the story here is the fights. The fights are the focal point of this entire manga, and this is where the manga excels. And it doesn't give you this history of the characters, beforehand. Pretty much we're introduced to them as they enter the ring. But it does something very unique where it plays on your initial awareness of who these characters are. Like, yes, you know who Zeus is because if you just heard about the mythology and everything about Zeus, like you have an awareness of who he is before the fight even begins. So the manga doesn't necessarily need to explain it to you who Zeus is. The same thing where Zeus battles against Adam from the Bible and how he was the original first human and everything. So like it plays on that too. Like you already have an awareness of who Adam is just by like living in society and culture. Like even if you're not religious, you know who these people are. And pitting them against each other, it goes into flashbacks and history of like particular things that have happened that made this character known for who they are. And because of that, you really kind of develop your own feelings about them based upon how you just feel about this historical character or how you feel about this god. And it does add different things to the characters as the fight gets underway. Every single fight has a flashback, so every single fight so far has kind of gone into both characters' history, recalling key events of who they are. For example, one is Hercules versus Jack the Ripper, and it goes into how Hercules, definitely wanted to fight for justice and wanted to fight for humanity his entire life, and really he's fighting for what's good and what's right. And that's what was so interesting against pairing him against a character like Jack the Ripper, who basically represents the darkest aspects of humanity. He's a character that thrives through trickery and deception and luring people in, whereas Hercules is a pretty much straightforward, like honorable fighter, like I will battle you right here and now, come forward kind of character. So that was a great pairing to do, and it was also really great because Hercules has such sympathy for the human race because he essentially grew up as a human, even though he's a god now, has godlike powers. And so he manages to find this kind of sympathetic side of Jack the Ripper, and through his backstory and everything, like we learn about what happened to Jack as a child. Obviously this part's all fictionalized, but like, you know what I mean, where it's like we have now this contradiction where Hercules is fighting on the side of the gods, but he feels such sympathy for humans, and Jack the Ripper, who dehumanized so many people as in his victims, is now kind of seeing that sympatheticness coming from Hercules himself, something that he never had as a child, where everybody seemed to betray him and whatnot. And it really kind of shows the juxtaposition between those two things, and I think that fight was a prime example about what makes this series so great, because it's taking what you know already about these two characters, but then it's giving you that little bit of added extra goodness, that extra flavor in there to take it one step further into making the story itself that much more fun and the fights that much more fun to read. Because if it was just two characters punching each other, even if they are from historical fiction or from religion and mythology, it wouldn't necessarily be that engaging. But since it's playing on what you know already about them and then adding that extra in there, those extra flashbacks and that extra drive between what's driving these characters, that pushes it forward to make it even more exciting. And also what I have to say about the fights within this manga is that it is nearly impossible to predict who is going to win, which makes it even more exciting to read. It's not like, oh, the humans are the underdog, so they're necessarily going to win every fight. No, and it's also not like, well, the gods, are gods, so they're going to win every fight. No, it's actually really, really well balanced, and I'm not going to spoil who wins and who loses in this video in case you want to check it out for yourself. But what I will say is I was completely blown away by at least two of the fights where I was absolutely completely wrong about who I thought would win. And it actually is like way more balanced than you think it would. The humans don't necessarily get an edge because we're rooting for them. And actually, as you're reading the series, you many times will find yourself rooting for the gods. Like how I was saying, like Hercules is a very sympathetic character and you're rooting for him. And then also even characters like Thor from the very first match who was in here. Yes, Thor and Loki are in here as well. It just like there are different things about each character that's presented that makes you think that either of them could win at any time, which keeps it on edge, keeps it interesting, and keeps kind of the flow of the fights being exciting. Now, so far, I do have to say, I think the biggest, most exciting fight was Zeus versus Adam. That completely blew all my expectations out of the water. I did not see anything in that fight coming. I love the powers and abilities that they gave Zeus, and how he kind of has that, like, old man anime archetype, but then he can also like change the size of his body to like like anything, like, because Zeus is usually hailed as like the most powerful god of all time, right? Like even now in our like modern day, we usually regard Zeus as being like, yeah, he's fucking Zeus, like he is the guy, you know. And the manga does him justice in that, but also plays with it and quirks it so that Zeus is kind of this like goofy character, but then can become very serious as well. And currently in the manga, so since we have gotten into our 5th fight now out of potentially 10 matches, I believe it's whoever wins the most out of 10, so the first to 6 victories wins. So we are on our 5th match now. I'm not going to tell you the status of like who's got more wins or anything like that, but this means that we're about halfway through the tournament itself. I don't know if the manga itself is going to end with the final match, but I would imagine that it is going to try to do 10 matches in total just to get the most oomph out of this entire story and this entire scenario. Now we are seeing more things happening behind the scenes. We have introduced the character of Buddha, who was not at all what I thought he was going to be, and I actually absolutely love his interpretation here. And there are things happening behind the scenes now where there's some sort of inner turmoil and inner battles happening outside the ring itself. So the politics are being brought into play here. And so what I can imagine for the second half of this series moving forward is that it's going to move not just inside the ring, but outside the ring too. There's going to be betrayals. There's going to be people you don't expect. There might be people you expect to fight that aren't going to make it into the ring. There might be people that we haven't heard of now that are actually going to wind up fighting. So there's a lot of things here that could happen. So like I said, I mean, this is primarily an action series, and it is playing off of what you know about these characters already. I wouldn't go into this expecting like a deep kind of like philosophical, you know, characterization sort of thing, but I would say going into it that this is probably going to give you more than what you thought you were going to get. And also, if the initial premise excites you, well, you don't have to wait, because like I said, this series starts off just by like punching you in the face. Like there's the opening chapter that explains what's going to happen. Chapter 2, I believe, like is the beginning of the tournament. So like it throws you right into it. There's no like we need to assemble a team, because each human is kind of being brought back per match. And it looks like after they're brought back, if they survive, they do stick around. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And because all these characters are famous, mostly, I know some of them are really only famous in Japan or like China. So like you might not know them offhand if you're from the States or from somewhere that's, you know, not from the place of origin of where this manga is from or where these characters are from, but like it gives you enough of a breakdown that even if you don't know who they are, you're pretty much on board right away. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be following this manga. I don't know if I'm going to review it chapter by chapter. I might wait until like a whole segment is done, like review it fight by fight. I'm not really sure. But as of right now, I just want to say this manga is crazy. It's awesome. It's action-packed. It has so many fun, incredible things that are happening here, and it's just a lot of fun, guys. It's like, you know, what you would call like a big blockbuster movie, you just call them popcorn flicks. Like they're not going to make you think like super deep, but at the same time they're just endlessly entertaining and you just want to shove a bunch of popcorn in your mouth while you're reading it. I think Record of Ragnarok fits that bill right now. However, as it continues going forward, I do believe there are a little bit of deeper aspects here, like I said, between like the Hercules and Jack the Ripper fight. Like there is some deeper stuff in here, but it's sprinkled in just enough that it like doesn't overpower the fun action-packedness of the initial premise of the series. So yeah, I say 100% check out Record of Ragnarok. It has my seal of approval. Just go into it with an open mind and the capacity to have fun in your heart, and I think you will definitely enjoy it. So let me know what you guys think. If you have checked out Record of Ragnarok, please leave your thoughts, comments, and feelings about it down below. Also tell me what your favorite fight is so far out of the 4 that we got. The 5th is ongoing, and let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you haven't checked it out, I urge you to do so, and let me know what you think after you do. So thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. Really do appreciate it. I appreciate the continued support of this channel up to 35K subscribers. That is really freaking awesome. I don't take it for granted. So I just want to humbly say thank you. Thank you to my Patreon supporters too. You guys are awesome. I really do appreciate it. Other than that, guys, like this video, comment, subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time.